Every leader knows that a thriving organization depends on the energy, productivity, and commitment of its people. But few leaders are able to cultivate the employee engagement and performance needed for this level of success. What's the difference? Positive leadership practices. Welcome to the Positive Leadership Movement Podcast with your host, positive work culture expert, Alex Bratty. Ready to harness the power of positive leadership? Let's dive right in.
Hello and welcome to episode 28 of the Positive Leadership Movement Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bratty, and in this episode, we're going to get a little provocative with some important questions that you need to ask of yourself and of your team right now. Before we get into that though, as always, I just want to take a moment to thank you for being here. If you enjoy this show and you get value from it, please subscribe, rate, and review it so we can keep expanding this positive leadership movement. And remember, if you've got a question about positive leadership, just drop me a line at questions@positiveleadershipmovement.com and I'll address it in an episode. In fact, speaking of, this episode was inspired by the several questions and stories I've received over the last week or so with leaders sharing with me their biggest fears about what's going on, their greatest hopes for the future, and what they're doing to work through these current crazy times. So keep your questions and stories coming because I always love to hear them. And not only do they inspire me, but they inspire other listeners too. And we are all in this together. All right, so let's get into these provocative questions. What exactly am I talking about? Well, as the coronavirus pandemic rolls on, as weird as it may seem, some people are kind of reaching almost like a new normal, right? We've reached this point where the initial shock of the situation has passed, and now we're operating with a little more focus and clarity because we're realizing, okay, this is going to continue for a while. So now I have to sort of adapt and find sort of a new groove, as it were. And so as positive leaders, we have to ask ourselves now, are we using this time wisely? Okay, so that's kind of the global question, the lens through which the rest of these other questions are going to be taken, right? So now is the time to really take stock of what has happened, what's currently happening, and what's expected to happen in the future, right? So as we look at are we using this time wisely, we're taking stock. And we also need to assess what opportunities are possible. Whether you're an essential worker who's on the front lines every day, and if you are, thank you so much for your service, for helping us all stay alive and well, or if you're working from home, these questions that we're going to talk about today, you can ask them of yourself and your team. And even if you're stuck at home and you're out of work right now, you can still use these questions for yourself and loved ones to help you figure out some next steps, okay? So let's dive into these and start getting provocative. Okay, number one, not that provocative, but number one, how are we doing so far in the face of this crisis? Take stock, right? Like actually ask that question, especially if you have a team. You want to know, what do they think about how is the team doing? How is the organization doing in the face of this crisis, right? And this is very simple. I mean, you can literally have everyone, including you, rate this on a simple scale of 0 to 10, where 0 means we're doing terrible and 10 means we're doing spectacularly well. And as you gather and review those scores, you will get a sense very quickly of how well the team is doing or not, and how much course correction might be needed to keep people feeling engaged and secure during these turbulent times, right? And if you see really low numbers on this, guess what that means? That means you need to have a conversation. Okay, you need to ask, okay, hey, what's going on? Tell me, why do you think we're doing so bad? Tell me what that is, because that will contribute to you taking the correct course correction. Okay, so it's not just a case of get people to sort of answer this and give you like what we called in the survey research world, a closed-ended question, right? Just a rating. If you're seeing low ratings, you want to follow that up and ask, okay, well, what exactly is going on, right? So that should be your top priority, is to follow up on those low ratings. at the same measure, we are positive leaders. We want to know what we're doing well. If you see a lot of high ratings, do a follow-up on that too. What are we doing that's so good, right? You can learn from that. We can always learn from success, right? So the very simple question of how are we doing so far in the face of this crisis will not only help you learn perhaps from success of things that are going well, but it will also help you realize when you need to course correct, and if you follow up on those low ratings, how you can effectively course correct, right? So there's multiple options that come out of asking that very simple first question. How are we doing so far in the face of this crisis? All right, number 2. What can we do to make life feel just a little better? Now, the reality is everyone has challenges right now, okay? I don't care who you are, what you're doing right now, you got challenges. Parents are trying to school their kids and work full-time from home. Essential workers are risking their lives every day. Those who are out of work are stressed about the bills that are piling up and they've no way to pay them and worried about what the future holds, right? I mean, there is a lot of challenges right now. Not to mention, we're all kind of suffering from a lack of social interaction, right? Like we're all dealing with some at least minor mental health issues right now because as humans, we're social animals, right? We're meant to interact with people. And I mean that physically as well as just getting on Zoom. Yes, getting on Zoom is awesome and seeing people on FaceTime is awesome. The technology is terrific to help us maintain some semblance of social interaction, but not physically seeing people for, weeks on end at this point, that takes its toll. So everyone is having some level of stress related to this, whether it's big or small, right? And so there are many, many things that in many ways that life doesn't feel great right now, right? I mean, we can all admit that. But as a positive leader, are you dwelling on that? Or are you asking yourself and your team, okay, we understand everybody's got challenges, but how do we make it even just a little better? And this is entirely what we call an open-ended question, right? There's no suggested response here for people. It is entirely open for them to answer however they choose. And the beauty of that is you're going to get back some interesting suggestions, right? You might be surprised at some of the responses that you get and the suggestions that emerge from, again, asking a super simple question. What can we do to make life just a little better? And sometimes it is the really little things that make all the difference, right? So for example, one leader wrote me this week and told me that, obviously they're all working from home like a lot of teams are these days. They weren't before. They were a co-located, team in a physical office. And so, yes, it's been an adjustment. And some people were reluctant to have the cameras on in Zoom and, all the rest of it. Anyhow, they have now found a new normal where everybody has their camera on and they start their meeting by, first of all, everybody is smiling. Everybody has to smile. No matter how bad you feel, everybody has to smile. Now, that might sound a bit nuts, but actually, it's proven science. Even if you feel terrible, if you smile, you will actually change how you feel mentally. So just the physical act of smiling, it almost tricks your brain into thinking that, yeah, I am actually happy. And it basically lifts your mood. And so they start their conference call now where everybody has to smile. The cameras have to be on. They're all smiling. And he said it has completely changed the mood and the tone of the meeting. How they close their calls is that every single person shares a pit and a peak, meaning a pit like what was their worst moment in the last day or two? Like what are they struggling with? What has been their trough or their pit? And then they share their peak. What has been the best moment? What's been, the happiest moment or the most satisfying moment, whatever that might be. And what are they grateful for? So there is acknowledgement, of course, that people are having challenges, right? They share their pit, but they finish by sharing what their peak and what they're grateful for. And this leader said that just doing those two things at the beginning and the end of the meeting has transformed how these Zoom meetings are going now. And basically those practices, if you like, those came out of him asking, what can we do to make life feel a little better right now? They actually asked that question and they got suggestions and they listened and they instituted it. So when you do that, the other part of this is when your team feels like they're being heard and they have input, that has a massive impact too, right? It reminds them that they have value, that they're a real part of this team, that even if we can't all see each other and physically be in the same office with each other, we're still connected. Everybody still matters. We still want to hear what's going on with you, and we want to share in this together. So what can we do to make life feel a little better is a really powerful question. All right, let's move on to number 3. How can we not only survive this, but come out even stronger? All right. Now, when I ask that question, how can we not only survive this, but come out even stronger? Chances are you're thinking of resilience, right? Resilience is usually the word that comes to mind when we think about surviving a difficult experience. And certainly we've talked about resilience and the need for it on this show several times. Now, beyond resilience, however, there's a concept of what's called post-traumatic growth, which is when you not only bounce back, right? In resilience, we bounce back to basically the level we were at before, right? We're going along. Oh, we hit a trough because we've got some adversity, but we're resilient and we come back up and we get back to where we were before all of that happened and we bounce back, right? Like that's resilience. But post-traumatic growth is when you not only bounce back, you exceed the level you were at before. So you don't just survive what happened, you actually grow and become an even better person, better performer, whatever it is that the whole thing was related to. You grow out of this experience. And as positive leaders, yes, we need to be fostering resilience, and we also need to be aiming for post-traumatic growth. Right? So by asking this question and, of course, listening to the answers, like I said before, you will help mitigate any victim mentality that's starting to creep in your organization or in your team, because it is really easy to go there with the victim mentality, right? I mean, like I said earlier, there's a lot of things that don't feel good about life right now, right? It's very easy to get in the downward spiral. But if we talk about, okay, again, acknowledge that it's difficult. Nobody's trying to say it isn't. I know it's difficult, but how can we not only survive this, but come out even stronger? When you frame that, when you ask people that question, you'll mitigate the victim mentality, but even more important, you'll start shifting the collective mindset into one of creativity and innovation that can help your organization not just survive, but thrive. Right? And a dear friend, a professional speaker, Mike Rayburn, he frames this in terms of what if. Yeah, but what if we could do it? I hear you, it's hard, but what if we could come out even stronger? What would that look like, right? Just asking that, what if, right? It changes the mindset immediately, and it's absolutely related to this question, how can we not only survive this, but come out even stronger? All right, number 4, which I think actually is one of my favorites in all 5 of these. Are there new learning opportunities here? There are so many. There are so many learning opportunities in this crisis. I've heard from leaders who have developed new and deeper bonds with their employees as they've taken the time to check in with them and show that they care. I've heard from leaders who say the situation has finally provided the time and clarity they needed to evaluate their professional path, and they realize they want to reinvent their career or business. I've heard from leaders who used to be reluctant or even refused to employ virtual team members and who now see the total advantage of doing so, and they're planning to in the future. I've heard from leaders who have figured out how to diversify their offerings so they can keep their business alive. I mean, I could go on, but I think you get the idea, right? There's a lot to be learned here if we take on the right mindset, if we're looking at this from a what are the learning opportunities here instead of, what are the problems here, right? So for you as a leader, what are your learning opportunities right now? There are plenty. Don't miss out on them because you didn't take the time to contemplate this important question, right? Because this is one where I've asked this to a few people, and it's interesting how some respond to it. Some people are very into this conversation about the fact that there's so much learning opportunity here. And other people are kind of closed off from it because they're still really down on the downward spiral of like, oh, the problems and all the rest of it. And again, I'm not trying to mitigate those problems or those challenges. Of course, they are huge. They're unprecedented, what we're all dealing with right now. At the same time, how you choose to react is indeed your choice, right? And so instead of looking at it as problems, look at it as an opportunity. What is the learning opportunity here? Because there's one in every challenge that you will ever face in your life. Never mind just during COVID-19. This is true for all time, but it's particularly pertinent now because we have so many challenges. All right, number 5. What are we going to do differently in the future? Right? I mean, we have to look to the future sooner or later. We're not going to be in this limbo state forever. I know it feels like that. I saw someone post the other day, this is a unique leap year. There's 29 days in February, 300 weeks in March, and 5 years in April. Yeah, it feels like that, right? But we are going to have a future, and we are going to resume life in some shape or some form. And so even though it might be a while, that will in fact happen. And so life may not look exactly the same as it did before COVID-19, but we will find some kind of new way of functioning, right? And when that happens, are you just going to revert to what you were doing before all of this, or are you going to operate differently moving forward, right? I mean, this pandemic has shown us that the unthinkable is absolutely possible. So have this conversation with your team to figure out how your organization can be ready to weather other crises and still come out on top, right? Because this isn't going to be the only one. Yes, it's exceptional in many, many ways, but there's many crises. I mean, 10 years ago, we were going through a recession, right? We're going to go through another one probably in a different way, but there's always going to be something. So what are we going to do differently in the future, right? And this really is related to number 4, which is about the learning opportunities, because you can learn a lot here about how to either insulate your business in the future for future crises. You can learn a lot about how to actually maybe optimize in certain situations like this. You can learn how to get leaner in your operation, perhaps. I mean, there are many different ways that you can learn from this and decide that you're going to operate differently in the future, that not only will serve you in normal times, whenever those resume again, but when other difficult situations arrive. All right, so just to recap, the 5 questions were, number 1, how are we doing so far in the face of the crisis? Number 2, what can we do to make life feel better? Number 3, how can we not only survive this, but come out even stronger? Number 4, are there new learning opportunities here? And number 5, what are we going to do differently in the future? These questions are simple, but they're not easy. I never said they were easy. I said they were simple, right? And that's exactly why you need to be a leader who involves the whole team in the discussion in all of these questions. The more your employees feel involved and heard, like I said earlier, the more vested they're going to be in finding solutions. And as you work through this bizarre journey together, you'll emerge more versatile and stronger than before. Right? Because especially when these questions are simple, but the answers aren't easy, it takes the power of collective thinking to actually move through this, right? So you've got to do this as a group, as a team, as a family, and move through this. All right. If you have got any of your own questions, or you just want to share what you're doing to use your time wisely right now, drop me a line at questions@positiveleadershipmovement.com. As I said, I always love to hear from you. Plus, if you want me to address a specific topic in these posts, just let me know. Also, if you want some simple practices that can increase positivity for you and your team, just go to my website, happinessatworknow.com, where you can download my book for free. And that book is 25 Tips for Leaders, How to Leverage the Science of Happiness to Increase Performance, Productivity, and Profitability. And it's for free at happinessatworknow.com. All right, that's it from me for this week. I continue to pray that every single one of you stays well and safe. And if you aren't an essential worker, that you are staying home. Thank you, as always, for choosing to be part of the positive leadership movement and for inspiring me to do what I do every single day.
Make sure you subscribe to the show. If you like this episode, please rate and review. If you want to get more from Alex, check out Happiness at Work, where she provides leaders with a proven path to cultivate a positive work culture that increases performance, productivity, and profitability. Go to happinessatworknow.com. Join us next week and harness the power of positive leadership for your organization.